He was undersized. In June 1942, a 16-year-old youth standing only 5'5" and at a mere 110 lbs entered a U.S. Marine recruiting station. The recruiter didn't bother to look up. He simply laughed. The Navy? They dismissed him as undersized. The Army paratroopers. They instructed him to go home and mature. This youth was a living fatal flaw. He was the P-38 that was unable to turn. By all military measures, he was worthless. But the recruiters had made a critical mistake. They perceived a child. They failed to see the weapon that hardship had forged. They failed to see the gaze of a hunter who had kept his family from starving for 5 years. This youth's name was Audie Leon Murphy. And in 3/10 of a year, this undersized reject would become a one-man force who would single-handedly wipe out an entire German company by getting onto a flaming tank that was moments from detonating. The tale doesn't start on the front line. It starts in the desperate poverty of the Hunt County, Texas cotton fields. Audie was the 6th of 12 children. His father, a destitute sharecropper, deserted the family. His mother perished from pneumonia shortly after Audie became 16. Instantly, this 110 lb youth was the family's head, the sole provider for his younger siblings, his main instrument, a .22 rifle, his drive, starvation. A neighbor would later remember Murphy's astonishing marksmanship. The youth could take down a running rabbit at 50 yards with a firearm most couldn't hit a barn with. Murphy's own account was starker. "If I don't connect with what I aim at, my family won't eat tonight." This was not target practice. This was staying alive. Every round cost money the family lacked. Every miss meant unfed mouths. Under that strain, Audie Murphy didn't just get good at shooting. He learned how to kill. He gained a marksman's instinct, a cold efficiency that would one day frighten German soldiers across 3 nations. When Pearl Harbor was struck, Murphy recognized his opening. The Army offered consistent pay, 3 meals and money to send home, but he was still 16, still light. After being ridiculed out of every other office, he tried the regular Army infantry. The recruiter examined the falsified affidavit from his sister, stating he was 18. He examined the boy, who seemed closer to 14. He heaved a sigh and approved the documents. The U.S. Army had no clue what it had just done. It had just taken on a field modification that would spare hundreds of American lives by shattering all the regulations. Private First Class David Mausuer, who went through training with Murphy, remembered, "We all figured he was a mascot. The drill instructors harassed him relentlessly, called him baby. But then we reached the rifle range. Those baby blue eyes turned cold as ice. He never missed. Not a single time." In July 1943, Company B, 15th Infantry Regiment, made landfall in Sicily. In the mountains, Murphy's concealed truth was finally set free. His rural background meant he moved without a sound. He used the land. He shot with lethal, cold precision. Near Palermo, his unit was trapped by a German machine gun. This was his initial problem. The rules said, "Await support." Murphy's rules said, "My family doesn't eat." While the rest found cover, Private Murphy, the 110 lb baby, utilized the terrain to maneuver around the enemy entrenchment alone. He took out the entire crew with grenades. Then, in an action that would characterize his career, he used their own machine gun on the fleeing forces. Captain Paul Harris put him in for a Bronze Star, writing, "This soldier shows a natural ability for combat that is remarkable." Remarkable was not a strong enough word. Audie Murphy had just found out something that would plague him for the rest of his days. He was incredibly good at killing. Sicily was only the start. The Italian campaign is where Murphy changed from a skilled soldier into a living nightmare for the Wehrmacht. At the Volturno River in October 1943, his squad was shattered by a German counteroffensive. Rather than fall back, Murphy took a borrowed sniper rifle and held the line by himself. 5 German soldiers were killed at over 300 yards. He was given the Distinguished Service Cross, the Army's second highest honor. He wasn't simply a soldier now. He was a force of nature. Staff Sergeant William Polson noted Murphy's technique. Murph didn't fight with rage. That's what was scary about him. He fought cold, precise, like he was doing math. See a German, remove the German, go to the next German. No feeling, no pause, just lethal efficiency. Then came Anzio, the bloody beachhead Churchill named the Wildcat. The problem? A German tank, the one thing infantry dreads most. Murphy didn't just shoot his bazooka. He crept toward the tank, using the land until he was at point-blank range. He completely obliterated the German tank. He received his first Silver Star. He had made it through Sicily, Salerno, Anzio, and Rome. He'd been injured. He'd been elevated to sergeant. The undersized farm boy now had a reputation that came before him. But in August 1944 arrived the challenge that altered everything. Near Montélimar, France, his platoon was ambushed. The problem, his lieutenant, his leader, was killed in the first volley. The chain of command was shattered. Sergeant Murphy didn't wait for instructions. He became the instruction. He assumed command of the platoon. The situation was hopeless. 18 Americans versus a German company of 100 plus. For 2 hours, Sergeant Murphy defended a vital crossroads. He guided his men, exposed himself to fire, and personally accounted for 15 enemy KIAs. He held the line. The Army, finally grasping what it had, gave him a battlefield commission. On October 14, 1944, the kid who was too small to join was now Second Lieutenant Audie Murphy. But combat takes its toll. By January 1945, Murphy was no longer the 16-year-old youth. He was 19, but he appeared 40. He had watched nearly every one of his original companions get killed or wounded. He had personally eliminated over 100 enemy soldiers, and now he confronted the Colmar Pocket. The Colmar Pocket was the last bit of French territory the Wehrmacht held. Hitler had commanded it be held at all costs, and he had dispatched his best. The 2nd Mountain Division, elite soldiers, veterans of the harsh winters in Norway, moved specifically for this fight. For Company B, the situation wasn't dire. It was finished. Look at the numbers. In 5 days of relentless, brutal combat, Company B had lost 102 men. All officers save Murphy were dead or evacuated. From a full roster of 187 men, they were down to 40 effectives. Murphy himself was fighting with a new leg wound from shrapnel. He told no one. Private Anthony Abramsky described their state. "We were through, done. Most of us hadn't rested in 3 days. Half the men had frostbite. Our machine guns were locking up. We tried to dig foxholes. The ground was like rock." January 26, 1945. The morning was gray and brutally cold. Company B was spread thin in a line along the Holtzwihr forest's edge. Before them, a mile of open, frozen terrain. They were, as Abramsky put it, sitting ducks. Murphy had set up his only anti-armor capability, 2 M10 tank destroyers. He had his 40 weary men, and he had a field telephone link to artillery, his only true hope. At 1 p.m., the German artillery barrage started. Tree bursts, shells detonating in the treetops, pelting the frozen ground with a spray of deadly hot metal. It went on for 30 minutes. At 1:40 p.m., the assault began. Private First Class Donald Ekman was the first to spot them. You could see the pennants on the antennas of the German tanks, 6 of them, and behind them, Jesus Christ! 250 infantry, all in white snow gear, advancing across that field like phantoms. Murphy's first move was to radio for artillery support, but artillery alone would not halt this. The Germans were too spread, too many, and moving too quickly. At 600 yards, the M10 tank destroyers initiated fire. Their first shots went wide. The crews were weary, their hands numb from the cold. The return fire from the German tanks was instant and catastrophic. An 88 mm round hit the rear M10 directly in the turret. It exploded in flames. The crew bailed out, sprinting for the woods. The forward M10, attempting to reposition, slid into a ditch. Its tracks couldn't get purchase on the frozen earth. Its crew also abandoned it and fell back. It was 2:20 p.m. Both tank destroyers were gone. The German infantry was now closing within 200 yards. This was the collapse point the moment the line would be overrun. This is when Lieutenant Murphy made a decision that defied all sense. He commanded his remaining 40 men to fall back, to pull back to prepared defenses deeper in the forest. "Fall back," he shouted, but he did not pull back. Instead, as his men ran for safety, Lieutenant Murphy ran forward. He ran through the artillery and gunfire. He ran toward the burning M10 tank destroyer. The vehicle was completely engulfed in flames at the back. Black smoke billowed from its hull. At any second, the thousands of rounds of ammunition and 300 gallons of gasoline within would detonate, making the vehicle a massive shrapnel bomb. Murphy showed no hesitation. He climbed onto the rear of the flaming, exploding tank destroyer and manned its .50 caliber machine gun. From this vantage, he was a perfect target. A lone, silhouetted figure standing on a bomb, completely open to 250 rifles and 6 tanks. Private Abramski watched from the trees. I saw Lieutenant Murphy get on top of the burning tank destroyer. It was the greatest show of guts and courage I have ever witnessed. The .50 caliber Browning is a devastating weapon. In Murphy's grip, it became a tool of precise annihilation. The hunter's eye from the Texas cotton fields took charge. For the next hour, this 19-year-old 110 lb boy became a one-man army. He wasn't just shooting, he was calculating. He held the field phone in one hand, calling in artillery strikes. He held the .50 cal's trigger in the other. He made a wall of steel. Sergeant Elma Brawley observed from the forest line. The German infantrymen got within 10 yards of Lieutenant Murphy, who killed them in the draws, in the fields, in the woods, wherever he spotted them. The German forces, these elite mountain soldiers, found themselves in an unwinnable trap. Their tanks, which should have destroyed the position in moments, were now ineffective. They could not move up without their infantry, and their infantry was being methodically annihilated by a single unseen machine gun firing from within a cloud of black smoke. Technical Sergeant Morris Wald, observing from the battalion command post, stated, "Murphy's fire was incredibly effective. He wasn't just spraying bullets. Every burst was aimed. He was picking off German infantry like he was at a carnival game. I saw him mow down an entire squad that was trying to flank our position." The Germans tried everything. They hit the tank destroyer with shells. Shrapnel ripped through Murphy's leg. His second injury of the day. He paid it no mind. He just kept shooting. He just kept calling in artillery. At 3:10 p.m., after 40 minutes of constant firing, the .50 caliber began to slow. He was running low on ammunition. The Germans sensed it. They began to surge forward. Murphy grabbed his carbine and started picking them off individually. The Germans were now just 10 yards away. This was the end. Murphy made his final, most desperate call. He ordered the artillery to fire directly on his own location. The forward observer, Lieutenant Walter Weissenpfennig, refused. He knew it would be certain death. Murphy yelled into the phone, "I'm giving you a direct order. Fire on my position now." The first 105mm shells landed 50 yards away. The blasts threw frozen dirt and shrapnel everywhere. The German infantry, caught exposed, were ripped apart. But Murphy, exposed on the burning vehicle, was also in the blast radius. The combination of his direct fire and the artillery detonating all around him finally shattered the German assault. The remaining infantry, maybe 100 men, turned and fled. The tanks, now without support, reversed and pulled back. It was 3:20 p.m. After one impossible hour, the assault was finished. Audie Murphy, his uniform singed, his leg bleeding, finally got down from the M10. 10 minutes later, the tank destroyer exploded. He walked coolly back to the tree line where his men were. According to Private Abramski, he was scary calm. He asked if they had any casualties, checked on everyone, then sat down, lit a cigarette, and requested a status report. His hands weren't even shaking. On that day, Audie Murphy killed or wounded an estimated 50 German soldiers. He had, by himself, halted a combined arms attack by 250 elite soldiers and 6 tanks. He had saved his company from total annihilation, and he had just cemented his name in history. The battlefield was a horrifying sight. German bodies were strewn across the snow-covered ground. The elite 2nd Mountain Division, the veterans of Norway, were in full retreat, their officers unable to rally them for another attack. But maybe the most telling part of this tale is the silence. In the decades after the war, historians scoured the German military archives, veteran groups, and personal diaries, searching for the German perspective of that day. They found almost nothing, a near-total lack of first-hand accounts from the men who attacked Holtzwihr. This void is the real evidence of what Audie Murphy did. The German units involved took about 50 casualties from Murphy's actions alone. Many witnesses were eliminated. But more than that, the German war machine was founded on pride and elite conditioning. The 2nd Mountain Division had fought in Norway, Finland, and on the Eastern Front. They had faced everything, but they had never faced this. The notion that 250 of their finest men, backed by 6 tanks, were not just stopped, but humiliated by one 50-kilo American kid standing on a burning tank, was a tactical defeat so profound they simply erased it. It was unthinkable. It didn't align with their doctrine. It didn't align with their worldview. It was a fatal flaw in their own reasoning. The official German war diary for that day tells the lie. It states, "Attack on American positions near Holtzwihr repulsed with heavy casualties. Enemy resistance heavier than anticipated." Heavier than anticipated was one man. They had encountered someone who was simply better at conflict than they were, and that realization shattered something core to their warrior ethos. Their tactical approach was flawless. Their gear was superior. Their soldiers were elite, and one farm kid with a stupid idea had undone all of it. The hunter had become the hunted. Murphy's stand had repercussions far beyond the immediate tactical win. This wasn't just about saving Company B. This was the big impact. The successful defense of the Riedwehr Forest, the position Murphy would not cede, broke the spine of German resistance in all of Alsace. The German inability to break through meant the Colmar pocket's time was limited. Holtzwihr itself, the town they were trying to take, fell to the Allies the very next day. Within weeks, the entire German foothold west of the Rhine was gone, taking 50,000 German soldiers out of the war and freeing Allied divisions for the final push into Germany. The undersized farm boy had just redrawn the map of the war. On June 2, 1945, near Salzburg, Austria, Lieutenant General Alexander Patch formally gave 2nd Lieutenant Audie Murphy the nation's highest award for valor, the Medal of Honor. The official citation, usually reserved in military language, strains to convey the reality of that day. It says, "He was alone and exposed to German fire from 3 sides. But his deadly fire killed dozens of Germans and caused their infantry attack to waver. For an hour, the Germans tried every available weapon to eliminate 2nd Lieutenant Murphy, but he continued to hold his position." Murphy's own account was, as usual, more blunt. When asked why he had mounted the burning tank destroyer, why he had taken that stupid action, his answer was plain. "They were killing my friends." He said later, "It was not a heroic act. I figured if one man could do the job, why risk the lives of others?" This was the McKenna mindset, the piano wire fix. It wasn't about fame. It was about seeing a fatal problem and creating a solution. Right now, his military service record remains unbeaten by any American soldier. He earned every combat award for bravery that the United States Army could bestow, some of them twice. His 33 awards included the Medal of Honor, the Distinguished Service Cross, 2 Silver Stars, the Legion of Merit, 2 Bronze Stars, and 3 Purple Hearts. He also received 5 decorations from France and Belgium. The boy who was too small to be a Marine had become the most decorated American soldier of World War II. 2. The war in Europe finished. The shooting stopped. Audie Murphy returned home. He was a national icon. He was on the cover of Life magazine. He was given parades. He was asked to come to Hollywood. He became a movie star, appearing in over 40 films, including To Hell and Back, where he portrayed himself. To the world, this was the ideal Hollywood end, the ultimate rags-to-riches tale. The poor Texas farm kid had beaten the Nazis and become a rich and famous star. But this is not where Audie Murphy's tale concludes. This is where the true war, the missing page, starts. The public saw Audie Murphy, the icon. They did not see the fatal flaw that the war had embedded inside him. The man who had shown no fear on a burning tank was now afraid of the dark. Murphy's post-war battle with what was then called battle fatigue, we now identify as severe post-traumatic stress disorder. He endured chronic insomnia, repeated nightmares, and a hypervigilance that made him sleep with a loaded pistol under his pillow. He was haunted. He wasn't haunted by the men he had killed. He was haunted by the men he couldn't protect. He was haunted by the faces of his comrades. He had survived, but he had never really departed that battlefield. Eventually, he couldn't even sleep in his house. He relocated to his garage, where he slept with the lights on, because the darkness reminded him of night patrols. "I can't recall when I didn't have nightmares," Murphy wrote. "They became part of my life, like breathing. A demon seemed to have entered my body." His first marriage to actress Wanda Hendricks lasted only 16 months. It was ruined by his PTSD. Hendricks later recalled, "He was two people. During the day, he could be charming, funny, generous, but at night, he became someone else. He'd stalk the house with a loaded gun, reliving fights from years past." The war was over for America, but it never concluded for Audie Murphy. He was battling a new foe, an invisible one, and it was a foe he couldn't beat with a rifle. Despite his own torment, Murphy became one of the first and most vital public advocates for veterans' mental health. In the 1960s, he broke conventions. He spoke openly about his nightmares, his sleeplessness, his demons. This was the stupid action of the post-war period. In an age when battle fatigue was viewed as weakness or cowardice, America's greatest hero stood up and said, "I have it." He was again the man on the front line, seeing the problem the engineers and politicians were ignoring. He wrote for the Saturday Evening Post, "What about the veteran who can't? What about the thousands coming back from Vietnam with the same problems?" He was no longer fighting for Company B. He was fighting for all veterans. But this time, he wasn't by himself. In 1951, he married Pamela Archer. And this is the other missing page of the Audie Murphy legend. This is the other hero of this tale. Pamela was a 31-year-old former airline stewardess, and she saw the two men inside Audie, the hero and the demon, and unlike everyone else, she did not flee. Pamela Murphy offered the unique perspective the public never got. Audie carried invisible wounds that never healed. He'd wake up screaming, reliving battles from 20 years earlier. But he never stopped trying to help other veterans. The war never ended for Audie, but he turned his pain into purpose. For 20 years, Pamela stayed with him. She was his ballast, his field modification against the turmoil in his own head. She helped him raise 2 sons. She weathered the nightmares. She backed his advocacy. She was the crew chief for the hero who was still in combat. Then on May 28, 1971, the impossible occurred. Audie Murphy, the man who had weathered every imaginable horror of war, the man whose statistics indicated he should have died 20 times over on that burning tank, died at age 45, not in combat, but in a private plane crash in the Virginia mountains during a storm. America mourned its greatest hero. But for Pamela Murphy, the real mission was just starting. Audie had spent his life battling for his friends. Now Pamela would spend the rest of her life battling for his. She had seen the fatal flaw of PTSD up close for 20 years, and now she was going to fix it. After Audie's death in 1971, the world found another missing page. The most decorated soldier in American history, the man who became a Hollywood star, died in debt. Bad investments and mismanagement by others had left his estate and his wife Pamela with virtually nothing. She was a 50-year-old widow with 2 teenage sons to raise and a mountain of her late husband's debts. This was her Colmar pocket. This was her impossible situation. The world anticipated she would vanish, a sad footnote in a hero's tale, but they forgot who she was. She was the woman who had stood by Audie Murphy for 20 years. She had confronted his demons with him. She was a warrior in her own right, and now she had a new mission. Audie's war was done. Hers was just starting. She did something that defied all expectations. She didn't write a tell-all book. She didn't sell his medals. Instead, Pamela Murphy, the widow of America's greatest hero, walked into the Sulva Veterans Affairs Hospital in Los Angeles and asked for a job. She didn't ask for a high-level position. She didn't use her famous name. She took a job as a simple clerk, a patient liaison. This was her piano wire fix. This was her climbing on the burning tank. For the next 35 years, Pamela Murphy devoted her life to Audie's other war. She arrived at the hospital each morning, took her small desk, and became a one-woman army for the veterans no one else would hear. She was the mechanic who saw the fatal flaw in the system. She saw veterans broken by Vietnam, suffering from the same battle fatigue that had tormented her husband. She saw them being lost in the bureaucracy, their files lost, their benefits denied, their appointments canceled. These men were the ghosts of her husband, and Pamela Murphy would not desert them. She became their champion. She was the piano wire in the broken control cable of the VA system. She used her quiet dignity and the profound moral authority her name carried to slice through the red tape. When a doctor wouldn't see a veteran, she made the call. When a benefit check was lost, she tracked it down. When a bureaucrat told a veteran no, Pamela Murphy was the one who walked into their office and did not exit until that no became a yes. She treated every single veteran, from the forgotten homeless soldier in the hall to the decorated colonels, with the same respect. She saw her husband's face, his pain, his fight in every single one of them. She was Audie's final and most powerful field modification. She wasn't just upholding his memory, she was completing his mission. The Audie L. Murphy Memorial VA Hospital in San Antonio, Texas, was named in his honor in 1973, but Pamela was his living memorial. A 35-year-long testament to the promise of leave no man behind. But that legacy, that 35-year mission, was only possible because of what happened on that frozen field. It leaves the one final question. How? How did one 110 lb, 19-year-old boy with shrapnel in his leg actually do it? It wasn't magic. It wasn't a movie. It was a perfect storm of 4 factors, the same factors that defined the piano wire fix. A brilliant mechanic, a fatal flaw, a stupid innovation, and a crazy result. The first factor was the weapon, the M2 Browning 50 caliber machine gun designed by John Browning. It was arguably the best heavy machine gun of the Second World War. Its 50 BMG round could punch through an inch of armor. Each round had the devastating force to tear a human body apart. It was dependable. It didn't seize up in the freezing cold. In the hands of a typical soldier, it was a frightening weapon of suppression. But in the hands of Audie Murphy, it was a scalpel. He wasn't spraying and praying. He was aiming. He was using the cold arithmetic he learned hunting rabbits in Hunt County. He was, as Sergeant Wald testified, picking them off like he was at a shooting gallery. One burst, one target. See a German, eliminate the German. The weapon was perfect, but the man wielding it was a master. The second factor was the stupid location, that burning M10 tank destroyer. To the Germans, it was a death trap, a bomb. To Murphy, it was the perfect McKenna solution. He understood the hidden truth of the machine. What Murphy knew, and the Germans didn't, was how it was burning. The M10 carried 300 gallons of diesel fuel and 51 rounds of 3-inch high-explosive ammunition stored in the hull. The German 88mm shell had hit the fuel, not the ammunition. The vehicle was a bomb, but the fuse was slow. More importantly, the thick black smoke from the diesel fire provided a perfect smokescreen. The Germans knew the fire was coming from the smoke, but they couldn't get a clear shot at the man inside it. Murphy was essentially fighting from inside a burning fortress that he knew could detonate at any second. It was the ultimate stupid action, and it was tactical genius. The third factor was the force multiplier. This is the part everyone misses. Murphy wasn't just a one-man army. He was a one-man fire direction center. While firing the .50 cal with one hand, he was holding the field telephone to his ear with the other. He was calling in 105mm howitzer shells from his own artillery miles away. He was multiplying his firepower by 1,000. The Germans weren't just running from his machine gun. They were running from the sky, which was exploding all around them, directed by the man inside the smoke. This is what finally and most desperately led to his command. "Fire on my position." He was willing to sacrifice himself to use his last and greatest weapon, the artillery, to finish the job. And the fourth and most important factor was the hunter. Military scientists have tried to calculate the odds. Given the 250 infantry, the 6 tanks, the machine guns, the mortars, it's estimated that over 10,000 rounds were fired at Murphy's position during that hour. Statistical models suggest he should have been hit 15 to 20 times. He was only hit once by shrapnel from an exploding shell. This wasn't just luck. This was the uncanny skill of the Texas rabbit hunter. He understood not being seen. He understood one shot, one kill. He had, as he said, become a killing machine. Dr. Dave Grossman, an expert on combat psychology, offered this analysis. Murphy represented a perfect storm. He had the technical skills from hunting, the motivation from poverty, the emotional detachment from early trauma, and most importantly, a protective instinct for his men that overrode his own instinct for self-preservation. He wasn't fighting for America. He wasn't fighting for glory. He was fighting for his friends. That is the story of the stupid action that changed the war. The too small boy who was rejected by the Marines. The fatal flaw of a 100-talib kid who became the hidden weapon of the U.S. Army. The piano wire fix of climbing on a burning tank that led to the crazy result of stopping an entire German army. His true legacy, the big impact, is twofold. The first is that he broke the stigma of PTSD. Because Audie Murphy said he had it. Because America's greatest hero admitted he was haunted. Thousands of other veterans, for the first time, felt they could ask for help. He gave them the permission to be human. The second is Pamela Murphy. She worked at that VA hospital until she was 87 years old, finally retiring in 2007. She never remarried. When she died in 2010, she was buried next to him at Arlington National Cemetery. The mechanic reunited with her pilot. The world saw a hero. Pamela saw a man. The recruiters saw a fatal flaw. The Army found a secret weapon. The Germans saw an impossible situation. Audie Murphy saw a problem that needed fixing. It all comes back to that one fact. The one that makes this the greatest missing page of the war. The 110 LB farm boy, who was too small to be a soldier, became the man who stopped an army to save his friends. And in doing so, he and the wife who loved him saved thousands more long after the guns fell silent.